I'm Marie. Welcome to Marie's Kitchen. I'm so glad you're back. Today we are making pancakes. Big stacks of fluffy, flavorful pancakes served with butter and maple syrup that everyone will love. Now when you're making pancakes, there's three things you want to think about. The first is leavening agents. Now that can be baking powder or baking soda or both, as we'll use in this recipe. The second thing you want to think about is the acid. If you find a recipe that doesn't have an acid, I want you to be very wary of it because you need that acid to activate the leavening power in the baking soda. So like in this recipe today, we are using buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk for an acid, you can use milk and add a little lemon juice or vinegar, and I will show you how to do that. So don't worry if you don't have buttermilk. I know not everybody always has that on hand. The last thing you really want to focus on when you're making pancakes for light and fluffy pancakes is your batter. You don't want to overmix it. Overmixing your batter, if someone tells you to really mix it until all the lumps are out, that's going to develop the gluten in the dough and it'll result in a tougher pancake. So what we're going for is light, fluffy, and flavorful, and that's what this recipe does today. Now I do want you to be careful because there are videos out there showing you these 2-3-inch pancakes, and I can guarantee you it's one of two things. First, it's either cooked on the outside and raw in the center, which you certainly don't want, or it takes so much effort that you're not going to want to make it with the kids on a weekend. So just be wary of those and find yourself a recipe like this one that produces fluffy, flavorful, delicious pancakes with very little effort. Let's get started. So first up, we'll start with the dry ingredients. We are going to do that in a separate bowl from the wet. So first we're going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I've already got 1 cup measured out here, and I'll just show you how to measure the second here. We're just going to use a spoon to scoop up into our measuring cup. That'll give us the most accurate measurement of flour without using a scale, because I know not everybody has a scale, and I prefer measuring cups anyway. So we'll just level that off here and add that in. So 2 cups flour. To that, we're going to add our first leavening agent, which is 2 teaspoons baking powder. I always have to double check because the jars look so similar, but this is my baking powder, and this is double acting baking powder. And what that means is that it activates when it comes in contact with liquid, and then it also activates when it comes in contact with heat. That's the double acting, liquid and heat. So we're going to use 2 teaspoons of the double acting baking powder, and you might see some recipes out there that tell you to use a tablespoon or more, and I do not recommend that. Mainly because it can throw off the flavor and give it a very metallic or overly tangy flavor in your pancakes, which I don't like. So 2 teaspoons works here, gives us the leavening that we need, the puff, without altering the flavor. Next we have our baking soda, and for that we'll need 1 teaspoon baking soda. Now baking soda doesn't activate until it has an acid. So that's why, as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to use buttermilk. If you can remember back to your elementary science class, you remember how you can make that big volcano with baking soda and you had to add vinegar to make it work. Well, that's kind of the same thing going on here. We have our baking soda, we add our acid, it's going to create bubbles, not so much as the volcano, but it's going to create enough bubbles to give our pancakes some height. Next up is about a 1/2 teaspoon kosher salt. You always want to have your salt to balance out and bring out your flavors. We'll give this a stir. Next we'll add 3 tablespoons sugar. And sugar gives it a really nice flavor without being overly sweet, because I know we are going to add, most people add maple syrup on top. So you don't want it overly sweet, but at the same time you don't want it also really bland. So adding the sugar just rounds out all the flavors, 3 tablespoons. Let's mix up our dry ingredients here. Now for the wet ingredients, and I am going to give you a few tips real quick on wet ingredients for pancakes. First of all, you want to go ahead and get out your eggs and your buttermilk first. Those will mix in a lot easier when they're at room temperature. So get those out first while you're getting out and setting up your dry and everything else. The other thing you want to do is go ahead and melt your butter. It's 3 tablespoons butter. Go ahead and melt that so you can let it cool. You don't want to have hot butter or that's going to scramble the eggs. All right, so on to our wet ingredients. We're going to start with 2 eggs. Oh, and let me mention, if you've watched my channel, you know I love a 1 bowl recipe, and so if I could, I would make this all in 1 bowl. but I don't in this case make it in one bowl because you really do want to mix your wet ingredients before you add them to the dry. If we did it all in one bowl, you would end up having to mix it so much, as I mentioned in the intro, you would activate that gluten and get a tougher pancake. So for the lightest, fluffier pancakes, you really do want to do wet and dry separate and then combine them. All right, enough talking. Let me crack my eggs here. I've got 2 eggs. Next step is 2 cups buttermilk. We'll just pour that right in here. And again, if you don't have buttermilk, which I totally understand, you can make your own buttermilk or close enough by taking 1 tablespoon vinegar or lemon juice, putting that in a 1 cup measuring cup, filling the 1 cup measuring cup full with milk, and let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. That will make your own buttermilk. So don't worry about it if you don't have buttermilk. Make your own with lemon juice or vinegar and milk. I'm going to give my eggs a quick whisk here just to get those nice and mixed, and see how easy they whisk. They're so easy to whisk when they're at room temperature, so do get those out early. Now we'll add in our 2 cups buttermilk. Give that a whisk. Next, for flavor, is 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I love a little vanilla in my pancakes, and this is my favorite vanilla. If you've been watching my channel, you might have seen it before. It is a Mexican vanilla that I buy in bulk, so it's a lot cheaper than buying it at the grocery store. This I buy on Amazon, and it comes in a big bottle. The brand is La Vencedora, and I can put a link in the recipe if you're interested in checking it out. So the final wet ingredient is our 3 tablespoons unsalted melted butter, melted and cooled. You don't want it so hot that it's going to scramble the eggs. So we'll go ahead and add our melted butter, and that adds some really wonderful richness. You could also use neutral oil instead, but you do want to have that extra fat in there for the richness. Now we'll give this a good whisk, and that combined so easily. One other reason you don't want to have ice cold buttermilk and eggs is that it can then solidify the butter. If you have that melted butter going into a really cold buttermilk, that will solidify it and it doesn't disperse as well. So see, all these things do have a purpose. We're not just trying to make a recipe more tedious. Okay, so there's our wet ingredients all done. Now it is time to add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients. So to do that, I'm just going to make sort of a well here in the dry ingredients. And then we'll add our wet right into that little well. Now you can take a fork or a whisk, and we're just going to gently mix this around. When I was growing up, my dad always says a few lumps in the batter are okay, and I never knew why exactly, but now I know, now that I'm older. He was giving really good advice, and that is you want to have a few lumps in your batter. First, you don't want to overmix your batter, so you don't need it to be perfectly smooth. Also, the lumps are actually little lumps of flour that are being hydrated and that are going to create a lighter, airier pancake. So here we have our butter. You can see it's mixed together. It is not at all smooth. There's no big streaks of flour or obvious, separation of the batter, but it is not completely smooth. There are some lumps, and it is nice and thick too. All right, that is done. Let's get our pan ready to go and make some pancakes. To cook the pancakes, you can use either a griddle, a cast iron pan, or like what I'm using here, it's called a Williams-Sonoma Scan Pan, and it has a nonstick surface. We'll turn our heat to about medium. And we're going to wait till the pan heats up. This is a trick my dad taught me. He taught me a lot of things about pancakes growing up. We made a lot of pancakes together. So the trick is to see if the pan is hot enough. You flick a little water on the pan, and if it dances and pops around, he called it dances. If the water dances, you know it's ready. We can try it here. I've got some water on my hand. We'll just flick it on. The water doesn't dance, so it's not quite ready. We're going to let it heat up a little more. To scoop out the pancakes, you can use either a large sort of cookie scoop or a 1/3 cup measuring cup, either way. And I do have my buttermilk here. You can have this or your milk. If your batter is a little bit too thick, you can add a little bit more milk or buttermilk to thin it out, just depending on your preference. So I do have that out here. Oh, the other thing we need to do is put a little neutral oil or butter in the pan. And I like to put some oil in and then just give that a wipe. Some people like to use a lot of butter in the pan, and if you do, which is wonderful, you get more of a fried pancake and it has more of a lacy top. When you use just a little bit of oil or butter that's wiped pretty evenly on the pan, you're gonna get a nice smooth golden brown top. Either way is totally fine, it's just your preference, but I'm just letting you know how to get the result that you want, whether it's that smooth golden brown or it's that lacy kind of fried top. Let's check the pan again and see if it's ready. Okay, you can see the water sort of dancing and popping there, so if the water's dancing, the pan is ready. Let's go ahead and scoop one out, and usually the first one is kind of a test case. You see if it's thick enough, you see if the pan's hot enough, what else you need to do. So we'll put a pancake there in the center, and then I'll just use my scoop to spread it out a little bit. We want to keep it pretty thick, because I know we do want that nice thick fluffy pancake, but you can spread it out a bit there. So a couple things to keep in mind when you're cooking your pancakes. The first is don't worry about perfectly round pancakes. That is overrated. What you want is a nice fluffy, thick, flavorful pancake, and that's what you'll get here. Next, you know the pancake is ready to turn when you start to see some bubbles appear on top of the pancake and then start to pop. When they pop, that means it's starting to dry out, so you know it's ready to flip. We'll go ahead and flip this pancake. There we go. It's got a nice, beautiful golden top. It's fluffing up really well. We're gonna have a nice fluffy pancake. All right, I think this one is done. We'll just check the bottom there. You see it's nice and golden, so this pancake is done. Now we've got a beautiful plate of pancakes here. It's nice and warm. We'll just add a little butter and some maple syrup and give that a taste. Oh my God, best flavor. So light and delicious, just a little bit of tang. I can't wait for you to try these. Thanks so much for joining us on Marie's Kitchen. Today we made light and fluffy, delicious pancakes. For the recipe, head over to my website, mariesaba.com. There you can print out this recipe and all my recipes, put them in a notebook, and make your very own Marie's Kitchen cookbook for free. If you like this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up. We so appreciate your likes. Also, leave me a comment. Let me know if you like this video, if you get to try the recipe, and of course, as always, if you have any questions, leave me a comment or email me, marie@mariesaba.com. I'm happy to help troubleshoot with you if you have any issues. Also, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button for notifications. I have new videos coming out every week, and I don't want you to miss any of them. My goal is to give you some really easy recipes that turn out great every time, so you can build some confidence in the kitchen and feel really inspired to share good food with people that you love. From my kitchen to yours, thank you.